Welcome to my apiary. I'm getting along pretty good at cleaning up the honey house here, so I thought I'd start waxing some frames. I really enjoy waxing frames. It's very, very relaxing for me. Just, I don't know, there's something about it. I really like doing it. So you can hear some sizzling away. That's my electric skillet. There's a little bit of water got in it, so that'll soon bubble off. I'll show you here. So I've put some of the miscellaneous chunks of wax, things that broke off, little bits and pieces. I'm not worried about this being super clean. You can see this brick is going to be next, and it's got some sludge on the bottom. I'm not worried about that. I decided to try something different this year. I was using the small 4-inch rollers, and I found that the part of the roller, the little foam thing, you know, I'll get it, it's over in the corner here. I'll turn that off. I don't want to get too wild and start to splatter. So this is what I was using, and these work great. The foam does break down after a while, and it starts to fall off of the center thing. And I don't mean the roller handle. I can't even get it off of there. The actual foam eventually comes off of the center plastic thing. Not the end of the world, but it's kind of inconvenient. And the foam does break down pretty fast. Not only that, but when I'm waxing a full-size deep frame, which is most of what I do, these are kind of better for mediums. You can see that I have to, roll that twice across there to cover it. Not a big deal. However, I decided to go with a kind of a larger, more conventional system. And I cut this, I bought this roller pad, and I cut it to be just about 3/8 of an inch narrower than that foundation, the opening in the frame, really. So I'll try that. We'll see how that works. And right away, you're going to ask me, what temperature am I running? I just set that at 200 F. That's about 95 C. That's probably pretty warm. I have my old piece of cardboard I used last year. So it's already covered in gunk. So let's see what happens. Now, so this is what I'm going to want to do. Getting the roller primed takes a little while. You'll roll for a while before the roller really gets into the groove of it. But, that's just what it is. Roll some of that on there. There's not much went on there. You don't need much, however, I do want more than that. So I'm going to try and soak the roller. I like the skillet. I don't have to reach. People use a crock pot, and I used a crock pot. I found reaching kind of down in the crock pot was inconvenient. And the skillet not only has a thermostat control, but it heats from the bottom, which a crock pot doesn't. If you want to use a crock pot, that's entirely up to you. It works just fine. Let's see how this works. See, that's plenty of wax. Because the roller is a cylinder, it doesn't reach the very edge right away. Okay, well, I hope that proves to be a little bit more effective than that time right there. And again, I like to really saturate the roller. you'll notice that as you roll, the foundation will cup. But then you roll the other side and it cups back. This is a nasty place to work. I think I'm going to get a cleaner piece of cardboard. So this is far more wax than you really need, but it's not a loss because the bees are going to use all of that and they're going to draw that frame really fast, really nicely. Even with the skillet, I find that I can wax far faster than the wax will melt. Okay, so this is a frame that I ran this year, and they've partially drawn it. And this is a good example of something I want to explain. I can run my fingernail here, and I can feel that there's little wax to no wax. And you see the color of this comb. This is not snow white comb. If it's not snow white comb, that means they've repurposed that wax from somewhere else. And part of where they repurposed that from is right here. They've stripped the factory wax coating off of that foundation and repurposed it. So same thing here. They've stripped the wax off of this area and repurposed it to draw a little bit of comb here. They didn't get very far. And that principle is exactly why I don't care for wax foundation. I can go into that more later. So when I extract, I will sort these out. And then re-wax them when things aren't quite so busy. Still learning this big roller. The small roller is really easy to handle, especially on these frames that are partially drawn. Oh, there's lots of wax there. You can get in the corners and stuff. So again, that's plenty of wax. If you put too much wax, the bees won't chew the wax out of the bottom of the cell and draw it up. But you need to put quite a bit of wax on to make that happen. This is looking really good. And again, these are just a few brand new frames I had made. And I'm just going to re-wax them, pre-wax them. The bees would draw that frame because there's wax already on it. But they draw it so much faster. Because what the bees do, and I'm just learning this, I just learned this last year really. What the bees do is, no matter when you put that frame in the hive, the bees will pull that wax out to the extent that they are able. Okay, so they'll use all of the wax on that frame and pull that comb out, and it may only be a few millimeters. I'm going to speak metric, but it may only be a very, very shallow comb that they draw. But the fact is, they draw it right away, within like a day, maybe two. And then that has the effect that when they come upon a honey flow, they have a head start. Let me try this. This actually works pretty good. I should have left the roller full size. I'm going to do it this way. I cut about 3 inches off of my bandsaw. Sliding off the roller. this guy in here. Well, it won't quite fit. And then we'll let that melt. Catch up on the wax here. While that melts, I'll talk about why I don't like wax foundation. And everything I say, when I say I don't like wax foundation, that's my preference. I don't want to steer you one way or the other, telling you you shouldn't like wax foundation either. It's absolutely not what I'm trying to get across. Why I don't like wax foundation has a lot more to do with the fact that I'm a fairly new beekeeper. And when I see a frame of comb, I like to look at that frame of comb and try to use the cues on that comb to tell me what's going on in that colony. And one of the cues in that comb are things like drone cells. There are others, but the main one is drone cells. If I see drone cells on a frame of comb, that can mean a number of different things. It can mean one of a number of different things or multiples. I'll use this frame to sort of illustrate. So if I have a frame of worker comb and she's laid up the worker comb and I see patches of drone brood here and there, that throws out some, I don't know, red flags, but it raises some questions. Why? Why is there drone comb there? Because sometimes you can have a situation that's called a drone laying queen. You can have a queen that's just old and failing, and that's kind of one of the symptoms is drone brood kind of sprinkled around. Now the patterns are a little different in different cases, but what I don't like is when my foundation isn't consistent. If I have this nice frame of worker foundation and they draw a nice frame of worker comb and they don't chew it up to draw drones, then when I pull that frame I see that nice sheet of worker comb and I kind of thumbs up that's okay. That looks normal. That looks completely normal to me. But if I pull that frame of worker, a brood comb, and I see drone brood sprinkled around, do I call that into question? Do I start doubting the queen and say, well, is she failing? Is there something wrong with her? And I've had this happen. I bought a queen one time. I bought a few queens, imported queens, and one of them ended up laying drones, not exclusively, but many. She was laying workers, but she was also laying a lot of drones, and it turned out that the symptoms led toward the fact that there was something wrong with that queen. I won't go into the physiology of the queen. It was explained to me, but that's irrelevant here. But there's something wrong with the queen, so the queen needs to go. Now, why am I bringing that up? That's why I don't like wax foundation. Well, I find that it fails a lot. It takes a lot of time to install, and it fails a lot. It fails in the extractor a lot. Makes a big mess. You got wires everywhere. I've been poked with those wires too many times, and don't worry, this is not theory. I've run a lot of wax foundation, and I hate every sheet that I've ever seen. So, when you put a sheet of foundation in a hive, and it doesn't matter if it's plastic or wax, and maybe you put that in the flow, maybe you put that in kind of at the end of the flow or late in the flow, and then the bees, you've seen that, the bees will draw a lobe of comb, something like this. Like this is best case, right? And what they often do, like I said a minute ago, they'll strip all of the wax off of this foundation in order to build that comb that they want to build. Because they don't have incoming resources to build that comb, they'll strip that all off and build all the comb they can. So what happens with a plastic foundation, then once the bees strip that wax off of that plastic foundation, then they start building something people call wonky comb. I don't think I don't care for that term, but they'll build comb that you don't want, or I don't want. You do whatever you want, but I don't want. They'll build the comb this way instead of flat. All that kind of stuff. So I say they get creative with their decorating. And so that's what they do. If they don't have wax on the plastic foundation, then they'll start building comb in various orientations and forms. A lot of times that ends up being drone comb. I don't want that for reasons I've stated. If you're running wax foundation, then they're going to do exactly the same thing. However, they're not going to strip the wax off the foundation. They're going to destroy the foundation completely. So you'll end up with a lobe of comb drawn here, and an empty space here. I see that all the time in people's hives. I've seen it in my own, where they will completely destroy that wax foundation that you paid for and you put in there with your wires and all kinds of stuff. So then what happens later, once they hit a flow, they'll have that lobe of foundation of comb built with an empty space here, an empty space here, and then they'll start building drone cells there. And it'll look a lot like my story frames, right, where I have the worker in the middle and the drones on the side. I don't want that. I want to control that. That's why I use story frames. I would far rather have the bees strip a sheet of plastic foundation and start building crazy comb, because I can take that out, rework it, re-wax it, good to go. The wax thing, there's nothing you can do about that, really. And that's my preference as to why I don't like wax foundation. All the extra work and everything as well. I'm not going to steer you as to what you should and shouldn't use. You use whatever you want. But those are the facts. And it really frustrates me when I see specifically YouTube videos, people talking about different kinds of foundation, and they say, oh, bees won't drop plastic foundation. That's an outright lie, because Manlake produces, and others produce, thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of sheets of plastic foundation every year. And I'm pretty sure that it's not all going straight from the factory to the landfill. I'm pretty sure it's being used somewhere. So if someone says to you, bees won't drop plastic foundation, my advice is take everything that person says with a grain of salt, because they don't understand what's going on here. And they've formed a knee-jerk opinion to support what they've chosen to do. People will so often do that. Oh, you're an idiot to use wax foundation because I've decided to use plastic. No, you're not an idiot to use wax foundation. Use it if you want. It's perfectly viable. A lot of people use it. I don't care for it for the reasons that I described. But a lot of those reasons have to do with my inexperience as a beekeeper. I don't want drone cells scattered around because it kind of throws me off, and I don't care for that. So that's my rant about foundation. Not about foundation, but about people who will tell you this doesn't work and that doesn't work. And it's like people telling you that queen excluders don't work or they harm the bees somehow. Well, they don't. That's just people. They think. they make things up in their head, and then they spew that as gospel. Okay, so while you're seeing how non-clean this wax is, that's okay. It is not going to hurt a thing. It's sliding off of that, you see. I just want to put a little tiny bit more on this frame. Just kind of like that. Cayman has a good video on waxing frames. He actually is, the video I'm referring to is he's waxing foundation, not frames per se. And he puts a very, very light coat of wax, which works. Anything will be an advantage to you. So that was partially drawn, just giving the bees a little bit of a help. A lot of tube there for the wax to reside in when I pull it out. Huh. Oh, that's too much. So here's the economic breakdown of this, in my opinion. I tend to get, yeah, see, the fact that that tube holds a lot of wax, that's inconvenient. I tend to get about 10 frames per pound of wax. That's kind of what I was getting last year. And that's assuming I'm waxing the whole thing, not just a little bit of a spot waxing like that one. And I'm selling my raw wax for $5 a pound. So that's 50 cents a frame. Doesn't take a rocket surgeon to do that math, eh? Okay, so 50 cents a frame. I think, well, that's quite a bit. It is. It doesn't really cost me anything beyond the first year, because all the wax I put on last year, I got back this year, because the bees didn't have to draw that quantity of wax. And this wax that I'm putting on now, I'll get back next year. So you can kind of look at it as the wax that I'm using here is the same wax as the wax I used last year. It's not actually the same wax, but it's the same, you know, the same quantity of wax, and it resulted from my waxing efforts last year. I'm sure putting on a lot. This big roller on mediums, it's not the best. That little roller would be better. I think I might go and get another small roller pad. Big one's a bit clumsy. I could cut this one down again. I think working with the small roller was far quicker and could possibly have resulted in less wax dripping and wax usage. So regardless of how you prefer to do it, what kind of roller you use, what you use to warm the wax, how thick you want to put it on. I highly recommend waxing your frames, waxing your foundation. If you're using plastic foundation. If you're using wax foundation, then there's already wax in it. There better be. If there isn't wax on your wax foundation, you got different problems that I can't help you with. If there's no wax in your wax foundation, you might be buying your foundation from China. They've been known to do all kinds of stuff like that. And no kidding, they have been known. There has been foundation come out of China that's made in part or in whole from paraffin and other non-beeswax sourced waxes, and a lot of bees have died because of it. So it's not just me picking on China. You want to be picked on, don't do stuff like that. So here's a little cost comparison as well. I know two beekeepers who went together and bought a whole pile of foundation directly from China. Now this was foundation that had no wax applied, and this was plastic foundation. If I don't specify, I'm talking about plastic because that's what I use and I'm more familiar with it. So they had all of this plastic foundation they had bought, and I think it worked well. I haven't really checked up with them. So when they got it, they had to spend time and beeswax to wax it all, and they used a different method than I'm using here, but that's kind of irrelevant. They didn't end up applying nearly as much wax as I'm applying. So, you know, but they still, I quizzed them, and it kind of, I think it still cost them 50 to 65 cents a sheet. And from what I could see, they didn't really save any money. It caused a whole lot of work. Because truly, if you have a good flow, you don't need to wax this stuff. The bees will draw it quite well. Yeah, I'm gonna get myself a small roller when I go back to town. I have the handle there, I just need the roller pad, I call it. See, I like that skillet. It just turns on and off, keeps the wax at whatever temperature I choose, which this is probably 100 C. Seems to be working quite well. I don't know if this will work. This has this is a frame I had to scrape the comb in order to harvest the honey. So it's sticky. It's got honey on it. We'll see. We'll see what happens next year. If they're gonna accept that or not. They'll do something with it. Same with this story frame. These were, I kind of missed them at harvest. And I had everything shut down, my extractor closed up and everything, so I had to do that by hand. smokes, did I ever put a lot on that? Okay, you can see that that's kind of a rainy day project. It's not raining, but it's a kind of a cold day project. And it sure helps out next year. You put those frames in and they draw them out right away. I've got about 40 boxes of deeps over there that they're previously extracted frames, so they are drawn a little bit, or at least most of them. I know there was some came through that had nothing, but most of them are drawn a little bit. So I've got about 40 boxes, about 400 frames. So we're going to keep at this the next few days before the bees get in here and I lose my building. I think I'm almost ready for the bees. That's a really good feeling. So thanks for watching my frame foundation waxing video, and have a great day and have fun.